Award-winning yet mediocre and controversial ag teachers Lyle Logman and Marshall Swafford are doing the ultimate ag education podcast for you. That's right, you. Each week, Lyle and Swaff will discuss topics that are important to the profession in this practical but unvarnished podcast in the hopes that you and your students will benefit. Disclaimer, the information provided in this podcast will be accurate and professionally beneficial, but we are not too worried about saying it nicely.
Hello, and welcome to the Ministry of Gentlemanly Ag Teachers, where we share with you the tips and tricks that have made us the highly mediocre yet controversial ag teachers we are today. Hello, everyone. I'm Swaff. Joining me, as always, is our old buddy Dogerman. And this episode, Wrinkly Jackets, Hatchets, and Steak and Shake, we're going to kind of debrief from the National FFA Convention and talk about all the things we thought were exciting and the cool things that happened and all the little piddly stuff that irritates the holy crap out of us. So, Lyle, you know what? Why don't you start and just what are your initial thoughts of the convention and new officers and skirts and what else would we see?
98th National FFA Convention and Expo. What a time. It's not the coldest I've ever seen it in Indianapolis, Indiana, around National FFA Convention, but I think this is probably the 7th or 8th national convention that I've been to. And I have never been more exhausted at a convention than I was at this one. But number one, because I was an advisor, you know, and I've been to convention in a lot of other capacities, whether it be as a state officer or a national officer, or I've went 3 times as an ag teacher. And so, and a lot, you know, as an ag teacher, it's the most exhausting.
Oh my gosh, it's miserable.
Yeah, geez, experience. I mean, it is because the stakes are higher. The stakes aren't real high when you're just a student, unless you might be competing. But as an ag teacher, I mean, the stakes are high, the responsibilities are high. You know, it's just a lot of and it ain't like where in Indianapolis, Indiana, or isn't like. I mean, I've seen a lot of things walking down the boulevard in Indianapolis, Indiana. I mean, and it ain't all been PG. So, you know, and kids where we're at, or kids are, if they're from where you're teaching, they're going to go, I ain't never seen anything like that in my whole life. And I go, I hope you never do again. I mean, and so anyway, it was 73,000 attendees in Indianapolis, and it's the national convention's always a highlight of the year. And for the most part, walking around Indianapolis is pretty easy. Aside from all the construction that they just like to do, you know, ahead of the biggest, one of the busiest parts of America.
Always time it out. Good timing.
Good timing, guys. Yeah, let's get out the jackhammers and redo a lot of concrete, things like that, and let's build a building right in front of the Crown Plaza, which was before just an open lot. And you know, let's just progress, Swaff, progress.
Sure. Well, I got to squeeze in some more hotel rooms that charge $495 a night.
No kidding.
So, you know, since it's going to be there until 2090 or whatever it's going to be. I mean, we got to
forever. It'll never. There's where we're going to have national convention. That's the way it's going to be. That's the way we've always done it. Yeah,
and that's what they said 98 years ago in Kansas City. Never going to move.
Yeah, it's going to stay right here in Kansas City, Missouri, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, how'd that work out? You know, and I don't even want to get on that argument about how farmland was going to give them their building for the National FFA Center, but you know what? I'm not going to be like that. Not going to be like that. So you said it was exhausting. So let me tell you how the exhausting trip worked out on my end. So Miss Agnes and I went to watch Caroline sing in the chorus, and you know, those chorus kids and the chorus the directors of the chorus do not get enough credit. Those ladies do this, I'm sure, probably free gratis, and they work with 72 kids, which is about 1 in 10 of the number of students that actually apply and audition to be in the chorus. Gal that runs the chorus, parents ran the chorus. So it's this nice little line bred situation where we've got somebody that knows what's going on, understands the kids, understands the situation, and those women were just great. Caroline had a tremendous time, and we got pretty lucky. On Thursday afternoon, there is a kind of a very intimate setting where the chorus and the band plays up in a little above the highway or above the road, one of those walkways that goes over the streets of downtown. And it was really kind of neat because you could see the kids up close, and the kids did a great job. And, you know, thank you to those ladies who run that deal, because I know you're not getting paid enough, and the kids just love you and they have a great time. And so we went and did that and watched the kids sing. And Agnes started not feeling well on Thursday. And apparently all the little cooties, either from the elementary school where she works or all the little cooties she picked up from the children at the convention, just made her miserable. And so she had the flu Thursday and Friday pretty bad. And then I got it on Friday, and I'm just miserable. And old college roommate of mine, he was in town. His son was up for a finalist for a proficiency award. So we went down and watched him, and man, my guts were just rolling. And we hopped on the plane on Saturday and we're just miserable. And we got home and kind of began to feel a little better. So we went to the grocery store and got us some food for the week. And apparently I purchased the wrong deli turkey, because last Wednesday, on the same day as our district LDE contest, I had this nice, very low-key but irritating gout attack in my left big toe. I inherited from my mother. Thanks, Nancy. And Thursday, it started to begin to feel a little better, so it wasn't so bad. So I decided, hey, Agnes, let's get Pizza Hut for dinner, because that's the happening place in Canadian. So we got some hamburger pizza, and apparently the preservatives that Pizza Hut utilizes to maintain the freshness of their stale hamburger, and I do not get along, because the gout attack that reoccurred was so bad last Friday. She had to take me to the emergency room and to roll in a wheelchair. They doped me up with more stuff. I woke up in time to go watch the Canadian Wildcats win the district championship football game. And I slipped on Saturday, felt like I'd been shot on Sunday, was limping around yesterday. I can kind of walk today. So you know what? I may never go back to the convention again after that whole deal.
Swaff, you're getting old. You had your time.
Well,
it's
awful.
You're in the way at this point. When gout happens, it's time to go.
I'm in the way. And speaking of being in the way, so Mr. Lokeman and I have some unique relationships with people. And there are some individuals out there in the world that, love us or hate us.
Right.
You don't even have to respect us. You just got to acknowledge that we are the irritation that ag education needs right now. But and speaking of irritation, Lyle and I had the lovely opportunity, and we posted pictures on the Facebook page, but we got to meet the man, Larry D. Case. And Larry, as we all know, was the National FFA advisor from 1984 to, I believe it was 2010 or 11.
You're correct.
So
yes,
26 years of sheer leadership,
willpower and determination, and no quit.
And, and I met Larry when I was a kid, because Larry was the director of ag education in Missouri before he went off to work for National FFA. My dad was a younger ag teacher back in the early 80s. And so I met Larry when I was a kid, and Larry can never remember if I'm my dad's kid or my uncle's kid. And at this point, Larry's so damn old, it doesn't really even matter. But Larry has a book, and it is kind of like the FFA Book of Secrets. And Lyle, would you like to show your book?
Right. I have here a signed copy from Dr. Larry D. Case.
Signed copy.
Signed copy. Says best wishes, and Swafford says, I
are you Dean or Dan's son? That's the only question. Are you Dean or Dan's son?
I remember who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, it don't matter.
Yeah.
So, Lyle, talk to us. You know what? And Larry's from this little bitty old town of Missouri that doesn't really even exist anymore. It's called Stet, Missouri.
Right.
And it's a wide spot in the road. My parents grew up not far from Stet, and I'd been there, and kind of a grain elevator left. And I've known Larry for a long time. Was it just me? But has he gotten a little more just kind of out there as he's aged?
Well, I think that with Dr. Case, especially, and I have admired true leadership throughout my life. And when Dr. Case walks in the room, and he's about 82 years old, but when he walks in the room, I breathe a little easier, because I know that we have daily things. There's a lot of emotional things that go into teaching ag. And when you see somebody that led an organization through the farm crisis of the 80s, of high interest rates, low commodity prices, nobody wanting to be in agriculture, and everybody was trying to get out because they were going broke. Why in the heck would I hitch my wagon to an organization to be a so-called future farmer of America when mom and dad are going broke and having to sell the farm? And for Dr. Larry Case, I can only imagine what a hard sell that was throughout the years, especially in the 80s. to try to make that happen, to save the organization, because the dip in membership that we did have in the 80s and trying to recover in the 90s, and which
Not easy.
not easy. That's not an easy sell, especially when you've seen the ups and downs that have occurred in agriculture throughout the years. But anyway, I think the organization still remains strong, but it was because of people like Larry Case.
Right.
It was, and that's not to mention that's not to mention Coleman Harris, who was National FFA Executive Secretary. But if you go a little deeper, and this is something we'll get into also, is the giants of agriculture, the giants of the founding of FFA,
Yes.
and they were the ones who inspired Dr. Larry Case's generation, in my opinion. And I wasn't there. I wasn't there by 60 years. But at the same time, you have to understand that these men, including Dr. Case, had the ability to think way out in front and
Sure.
have the sensitivity to understand what we would have to do as an organization in order to survive. And so it is things like that, meeting with Dr. Case and reading his stories in his book. You see some true leadership and somebody that has been through that, has been through that fire, in order to ensure that this organization has become what it is today.
Sure.
And it's in no short measure because of him, because it wasn't an easy thing.
No, and you talk about how things have progressed over the course of the last 98 years, and when Larry came in during that crisis when agriculture was going to hell in a handcart, membership of the organization actually dipped for 2 or 3 years, and they're the only time in its history when it did so, and what it has become today. And not that I agree with everything National FFA does, and not that I disagree with everything National FFA does. I think there are some things that are very, very good. CDEs are, you're legit if you are at the convention, and if you're one of those teams, it's a gold emblem team, or fortunate enough to get your name called, throw a shout out to the Savannah High School FFA in Missouri meets team that was fourth. That's my old high school, and the ag teacher there that took those kids was the guy that replaced my dad, and it's pretty exciting to watch some fellow Savannah Savages get their names called at the convention there. But some of the programs that exist today are just top notch. That agri-science fair is on that top end is amazing. And some things that I noticed, you've got a couple of different types of agri-science fair projects, and your co-teacher had a national winner or two, so she's a major player in that, as well as those ag teachers. Throw a shout out to those ag teachers at Stillwater High School in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Those guys put on an agri-science fair clinic. That's how you do it. Kluwer, what's her name? Bailey Kluwer, that teaches in Stillwater, just an absolute top-notch ag teacher. And I saw some projects that really made a statement on, okay, man, this is neat findings. And then there were some projects that were just really, really well done. And if that's a game that you want to play, that's a great one, because you don't have to you can get by without having a whole lot of resources.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like dragging an entire team all over the place. And so, that's an opportunity, especially for a young teacher, to get some kids in it and get some kids rolling to play at that national level, maybe a little earlier than what you were anticipating doing in your career. And then one of the areas that I've become a little more of an advocate for, so Miss Agnes went and she served as a judge for that Spanish Creed Invitational. And I hope that becomes a full-on national contest. It's endorsed by National FFA and supported, but it's not a true event yet. But if we don't let that become a national contest, we are doing a disservice to a significant membership of the organization. We have a lot of Hispanic students and a lot of Spanish speakers that need an opportunity to speak, and this gives them a great opportunity to do so, and that contest is getting a little bit better. Agnes is going to have an opportunity to sit on that committee moving forward, and hopefully it becomes a contest like the rest that are high quality, like the rest of them are.
Well, and I'll speak to this Spanish Creek speaking contest as somebody comes from the state of New Mexico, and I can speak Spanish pretty good. I mean, and there ain't, because I was raised around a lot of people that could speak it. And so when you think about, and a lot of people wouldn't think that I would care or would care to learn another language, but I'm not ignorant either. I mean, there comes a point where we're one of the only countries on earth that's not bilingual. I mean, it's not predominantly bilingual. And
Right.
so there's no excuse why we shouldn't endeavor to learn another language. There ain't nothing wrong with it. I find it pretty entertaining. And I find it pretty enlightening to kind of know what somebody else is talking about in another language. I mean, it ain't. And so, yeah, I'm an advocate for that too. If it became a national contest, I mean, what's wrong with being, what's wrong with being enlightened on? We
Right.
used to be a society that, at the turn of the century, the 1900s, you went to college, you studied the classics, you studied
Right.
Greek and
Yeah.
Roman culture and literature
Yeah.
and Latin.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
everybody, it's like in the Dead Poet Society, that movie, and he's like, what does he say about poetry? He's like, that's what being a doctor, engineer, lawyer, whatever, these are noble pursuits, but what justifies pursuing it? Art, whatever. So it's an art, just like anything else. And so, yeah, I'm a proponent of it. Why not? What could possibly be the big issue?
Yeah, and if they need money for plaques, I'll pay for the plaques. I don't care. I happened to see a couple of former students from old compadres of yours from New Mexico, young ag teachers down there at Hobbs, and their student that made the semifinal round, and they're still young teachers. They're still plugging away and doing what's best for their kids. And so, the title of the episode was Wrinkled Jackets and Bad Axe Hatchets and Steak and Shake. What that has to do with the National Convention? Well, those are some observations that we made.
And Swaff's about to make them.
I'm about to make them. And so some observations. One, Miss Agnes was walking around the convention. And if you haven't had a chance to meet Miss Agnes, look back a couple episodes, and she joined us and made that episode a hell of a lot better than what it was going to be with Lyle and I just talking there. And
a lot prettier. A lot prettier, too.
Much prettier, much prettier. And kind of give it a little bit of a Hispanic flair. And so Miss Agnes was walking around, and all she could say for the 3 days that she was there when she felt good was how impressed she was with just a number of kids and how polite and well-behaved the kids were that she saw. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, but, when she was judging, she spent most of Wednesday afternoon judging the Spanish Creed. So I had a chance to kind of tool around the expo and the shopping mall. Money grab. I mean, the shopping mall. I shouldn't call it money grab, but the money grab shopping mall. And
we're going to get in so much trouble.
So much trouble. And I had an opportunity to walk around. But one thing I noticed, and there's always the kids that roll in without their jackets on because they just got off a bus and ag teacher had to come get them registered. And I get that. But, most of the kids were dressed the way that they should. I still have a problem with white shirts that hang out of FFA jackets. And I guess I can choke that down when the kids are acting like young men and young ladies. And I did not approach a group of students because I go out of my way to talk to kids. I do. I want to see where they're from. If they've got some jacket you don't see all the time, I'm going to go talk to those kids. I had a chance to sit by the Alaska delegation at one of the sessions, and there wasn't a whole lot of them, but man, except behind these kids from North Pole, Alaska, and they have these little stickers, and they gave me one. Like, well, I wish I had one that said, we grow at 40 below, and it's the best sticker I ever had ever. But the kids were well behaved. They talked to me. I always ask kids, where are you from? What are you doing? Why are you here? And had more fun talking to the students, which is a testament to you ag teachers, because you're teaching your kids how to act like young men and young ladies. And that is important. So with the bad axe hatchet. So one day I was walking back, I think it might've been Thursday afternoon or something. I was walking back to the hotel to check on Agnes, and I decided I was going to go by Five Guys downtown. And of course, the line's not as long as it was at the Steak and Shake that looked like it was giving out free food the entire week we were there. But I go into the Five Guys and order my overpriced cheeseburger and some French fries. And I see these young ladies sitting with their ag teacher at a table, and their jackets, they were from Michigan, and their FFA chapter was Bad Axe, like BADAXE. I was like, oh, okay, like Paul Bunyan. And so and I go, girls, just to be a smart, I go, girls, are you guys like the bad axes? And they go, no, our school mascot of the Hatchets. So they're the Bad Axe Hatchets. So I don't know who the ag teacher is for the Bad Axe Hatchets, but you've got some nice young lady FFA members in your program, and you should be proud of those young ladies because they all have great senses of humor, and we're happy to talk to this old goofball. I want to know about the Bad Axe Hatchets. And so, with the kids that I talked to, man, I had a great time. Met a bunch of kids. But on the other hand, there were some observations that I have concerns about. And I think a lot of it stems from, we should expect of our students what we expect of ourselves. And if our ag teachers look like they just got done doing the chores and we're going into the convention, then it's not much of a stretch to expect students to be dressed not as well as they could be. My philosophy is if I've got students that are expected to wear official dress, then I'm going to throw on a shirt and tie. And I wear jeans and a welding shirt to school every day. But when it comes to going to an FFA event where I'm expecting kids to dress up, I'm going to do it. And if we're going to play this game, or we're advertising 73,000 FFA members at 1 million plus, and we want to portray our students as the young professionals that they are, let's give them a good example to follow.
Well, if we don't live in a disciplined society like we used to, right? So the FFA jacket was born out of needing a garment to wear, needing a jacket to wear that
Right.
that you could wear in the weather in Kansas City, right? If you were going to National Convention. And also it wasn't so heavy that you couldn't wear it in the summer, okay? If you look at the environment that we were in 1928, which is only 10 years after the end of World War I, and if you look at how we dressed in World War I, and if you look at how we dressed in World War II, not only when we went to war, but when we came back in the 50s, men and women prided themselves on how they dressed.
Sure.
Because if you were becoming a part of the middle class, becoming a part of the upper middle class required that you dress a certain way. You dressed in, like an art jacket is reminiscent of a military uniform. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And it was required to be disciplined to wear it because a lot of the ag teachers were veterans of wars.
Sure.
And they were clean shaven and had haircuts. And when young ladies were admitted into the organization, the first lady ag teachers looked immaculate. They dressed immaculate because they were proud to be a part of a profession that had previously been denied to them as an FFA advisor. And so when we look at the environment that we live in today, social media is against us because you look at the major influencers and how they dress. Every day's a vacation, Swaff.
Yeah.
But like me, I wear a collared shirt every day or a vest and starch jeans, and I don't shave as much. But I try to look decent. I try to look put together. My hair never gets long. Yours can't get long.
No,
Sorry.
No.
But I'm just saying, my ag teacher showed up every day in a collared shirt and pants. All my ag teachers did. And so I make no apologies for the standards that I've seen. And I hear a lot of complaints. I hear a lot of complaints all the time about wearing official dress. The students don't want to be in official dress, right? Official dress meant a lot to me to wear because I felt like I belonged. I didn't feel like I belonged on the ball court, right? I didn't feel like I belonged on the football field. I felt like I belonged in FFA because I had an opportunity to wear the official dress. That was my jersey, right? And when my jersey isn't worn right, I get really upset because I've been around so many great people who are a product of this organization who wore official dress with a lot of pride. And the issue is we've let too many things go. But the cards are kind of stacked against us in education. We are rule takers and not rule makers, especially as teachers. And we put up with that stuff every day. And you try to be the example, but you can only do so much. You can only do so much before they have to decide what they feel is right and wrong to them. But that's just my thoughts on it. But I understand not everybody can afford official dress. I get that. I grew up during the recession in 2008. I get that. You remember those days, what the country was like. Nobody had no money anywhere. Sure. And my grandfather grew up in the Depression. Nobody had no money, especially if you came from the environment that I did. I came from hardworking parents. And we never went without. But, I came from people like that.
But the extras weren't right.
But what I don't care for is when kids are in full official dress. They have full official dress, and their tie's not cinched up, and their jacket's undone. What's the deal? What is going on? And they've got full official dress.
Yeah.
And why is it not on right? Because
if we're ashamed to wear it, then why are you at the convention?
Because we are afraid as educators to offend somebody. You're not, and I'm clearly not. Every lesson in the history book of Lyle Logeman proves that he's not afraid to offend somebody if he thinks that something's wrong. And you're sure not. I've been around you enough to see it. But there's got to be some standards. And they've got to be, those standards have got to be upheld.
If we want to portray the image that we want to portray, let's portray it.
Yeah.
And it starts with the teachers. Folks, you are professionals. You are literally getting paid for this. So you are a pro. as a result, you're getting paid. It may not be very much, okay, but that's the life you chose.
Yeah. Or it
Spend
shows
the
it for
money.
you.
Spend the money, buy some clothes that make you look like a professional. That way your students will look like professionals with you.
Right.
You know, as soon as we got back, 2 days after we got back from the convention, we turned around and went to our district LDEs. And, you know, had one kid sneak through and I missed it and my teaching partner missed it. And it irritates me, but he was in official dress, but it wasn't the way that I wanted. But, you know, I would rather have some kids change their clothes after their event than look sloppy in an FFA jacket. I can choke that down a lot better.
Right.
But you know what? I wore my tie. I threw my shirt and tie on when I went with those kids. And you know what? Kids, if it's amazing, most of the time, even though some of the students aren't the way we exactly kind of want them, there is a little bit of a switch on most of them that partially gets flipped when that jacket and that official dress come on.
Yeah.
And, you know, I took some boys with us last week that, you know, they're not bad kids. They get pretty squirrely in class and I kind of got to keep my thumb on them. But you know what? They threw their jackets on and, you know, they were a different group of boys for that day that we were gone. And, you know, we didn't qualify out of district because we were ill prepared. And I think we recognized that after the fact. But I was proud of them for the way that they portrayed themselves. And, you know, I'm good with that. And part of this is, yeah, for as much as I like to see kids win, sometimes winning isn't found with a plaque. It's, did these guys grow up a little bit? And some of these guys grew up a little bit. And I'm going to kind of call that a win and kind of go on. Now, earlier, Lyle, you mentioned something about the original founding fathers of the National FFA. And at the expansive expo, which has become, it seems like it's a little bit different every year. And some years it seems like it's more full than others. And this year it kind of seemed like there may have been a gap or two where a big sponsor didn't have a big exhibitor wasn't there, maybe that had been there in the past. But anyway, there's always, you know, the Army and the Marines always do a really good job of taking up a lot of space when we need them to, and we appreciate those folks.
Yeah,
But
it is Veterans Day. Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
it is Veterans Day. It is Veterans Day, so we appreciate their service. But you know, the Virginia Tech booth was kind of an interesting booth because you had the table at the Virginia Tech booth.
Well, I'll say this first, and we talk
Please.
about the Army and the Marines. Who was there? Was Army and Marines there?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
But I know
And
the Army
so-
was, and the Marine. I think they were on opposite ends of the trade.
And that's something I want to talk on, you know, as when you see the Army and Marines there, and Marine Corps just celebrate their 250th anniversary, right?
Right.
And did Army celebrate their 200th?
I think it was before the Army's been around for a long time.
I know, but weren't
You
they
start looking back at the French and Indian War.
1775 or
So, yeah, I think so.
anyway? Okay, so I guess they had to have, huh? Because the Lexington and Concord counts. I don't know. Anyway, I feel shame that I don't. But what I am saying is this: it's important for kids to see the Army and the Marine Corps there,
Right. Yeah.
because
And
them
I'm glad
guys
they're
and
there.
gals are sharp looking. They are
Yes.
disciplined.
Yes.
And a life of discipline, truthfully, is freedom. And they live that life. They have a life of discipline that they have a dictated purpose, right? And I think when students see that, kids see that, that's important. And
Yeah,
I'm glad
and-
that great emphasis is put on that.
And I appreciate the fact that they come and make those and give those students opportunities to do pull-ups and,
Heck yeah.
and engage in some of those discipline type behaviors. Because I was looking at Linder's Feed Company the other day, looking for some, I don't even know what I was looking for. I was looking at supplements or something. Anyway, I stumbled onto these little banners that Linder sells, and like, 10 things that require no talent, like waking up in the morning, tying your shoes, that kind of thing. And discipline is one of those areas that requires no talent. You do not have to have any talent to be disciplined about something. And I looked at that and I'm like, I got to buy those and hang them up in the classroom, because I've taken some young kids out to the shop, and discipline, I've really been hammering hard on being disciplined about the way that we measure, the way that we use our saw, reading our tape measure 3 or 4 times before we cut, making sure the saw blade's going to come down in the right spot. And it's really kind of paying dividends. And they thought I was joking yesterday when we first went out there. And then I found one of the little groups. I gave everybody, put them into groups of 3, and I give everybody their not their blueprints, but just their plans for their project. Okay. Page by page, however long it was. I go, I better not find any of these on the floor after the end of the class period. And I'll get our stuff put out, tape measures, so on and so forth. And what did I find? by God, I found one. So some group left theirs on the floor. So get back to class this morning. I go, okay, group number 1, you got your little stuff. Yeah, that's well. Group 2, we get down. Well, what about this group? Well, I thought you had it. No, you had it. So I gave them a choice of 2 days worth of lunch detentions or dropping their letter grade on their project by 2 whole letters. The old eyeballs got real big. Well, he's not joking. Guys, I'm not joking. Well, you know what was not found on the floor at the end of the class period today? Nothing. Everything was put where it was supposed to. It was amazing. Stuff got cut right. The tape measures got put back in the drawer that said tape measures. It was amazing. And so we're going to hammer home on this whole discipline thing because you know what? It requires no talent. You don't have to have any skills to put your stuff up. So what were we talking about? Yes, absolutely. The tech booth.
Right.
So the table. They got the table there.
The great
and that
table.
Table's kind of neat. So if anybody has ever had an opportunity, so back in 1925, when Edmund McGill and Henry Grosclose and Walter Newman and Harry Sanders were all sitting together, and they sat around this little table in Lane Hall, I believe, back in the 1920s. And those guys decided to have the FFV at that time. And there is a table that is now still in the Ag Education Department of Virginia Tech where those 4 guys sat. And there's a little, there goes the lights again. And there's a little placard in the middle of this table that says, at this table in 1925, Henry Grosclose and yada, 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 decided to have the FFV. And then they had some write-ups about these 4 guys in the Virginia Tech booth. And so on Wednesday, I think it was, Lyle and I were talking on the phone, and Lyle was like, hey, you got to go by the Virginia Tech booth and get yourself a playing card.
Yeah,
like,
trading cards.
Trading card. I was like, what are you talking about? Like,
of which I didn't get any.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was thinking like Mark McGuire trading cards or something like that. No, it wasn't Mark McGuire. It was the 4 founding fathers of the FFA. And so I go up to the young man that was working at the booth. And my dad's twin brother, my uncle, was an old ag teacher in Virginia for 1,000,000 years. And if you didn't know Swaff in Virginia, you'd been living under a rock. And so I go up to the young people and say, hey, can I get one of these trading cards? I'm like, yeah, but you got to come back and learn. I go, oh, about the table there where Henry Grosclose and Edmund McGill and Harry Sanders and Walter Newman all decided to have the FFV. And the kid kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, I ate lunch there when I was in grad school. You had to use a coaster because you can't leave water stains on it. And they go, okay, well, let's go look at the 4 founding fathers. Oh, you mean Harry Sanders, whose niece I went to grad school with at Virginia Tech? He goes, yeah. Oh, and then you mean Henry Grosclose, the guy that was in alcohol rehab in Baltimore when he wrote the opening ceremonies for the convention?
And he is so much trouble.
And
wow.
I'm like, just give him my card. Just give him my card. Dude, I know more about it than you do. And so I got myself interestingly enough, a Harry Sanders trading card. And I actually went to grad school with his niece, and she was a very nice lady.
Who do you think drew that picture? It's a little scary.
I don't know. Well,
I know he was a better looking guy than that.
I don't know, but I could see the resemblance. No, I can't. Very nice man was Harry Sanders, though. His niece was great.
Like, draw a caricature of Harry Sanders and put it on the card.
One of the great things about having that Virginia Tech booth, though, up until here, when I remember when I was a kid, and even when I first started teaching, when the FFA manual was actually produced in paper that you could actually purchase from National FFA, that cost you $1, they had Henry Grosclose as the father of the FFA. And, so here's the deal. Henry Grosclose gets the moniker of being the founding father or the father of the FFA simply because he was of the 4 guys, Sanders and Grosclose and Newman and McGill. The other 3 didn't want to have the recognition. Yeah, that's how it was. Okay. Grosclose was the kind of the, what do you call him, Lyle? The prima donna of the group. And
yeah, he was the George Patton of he had
Instagram before. If Instagram existed 100 years ago, he had it, and TikTok and whatever, all that crap.
Coach Bobby Knight of his day or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, he was just a maverick renegade. I mean,
you get him in a judging contest, he'd sling a chair across the contest like Bobby did at a basketball game. I mean,
and rightfully so. Anyway, go
ahead.
Misplace
those South.
Good. I like them kind of people. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and so and the deal is those 4 guys kind of got kicked to the curb for a long time until they kind of resurfaced here recently with some of the new things that are getting put in the manual. But those 3 other guys really did most of the work. They just didn't want the recognition. And, I'm finally glad that the other guys are getting their recognition as well, because they were kind of kicked to the curb for a long time, and they did a lot behind the scenes that kids and teachers now just don't understand.
Well, it's attributed to, there's other founding fathers like Charles Homer Lane, who was the first national advisor.
C.H. Lane, right, yeah.
And then W.A. Ross, who wrote Forward FFA and was national executive secretary for years. Hunsicker. I mean, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them that it's kind of sad that not more history's been written on them, because you know they were interesting people. And I'll say this about the four, and men who have the foresight at that time to sit down at that table and say, hey, let's draw up this Constitution. And number one, all these men are Freemasons.
Sure.
And they're using the literature that they know as Freemasons to craft opening, closing ceremonies, to craft our Constitution, to base it off what they know as Masons in a men's lodge. And so, but with one stipulation, when they create the organization, that we're not a secretive organization. That's the one difference between the literature may be the same. A lot of the language may be the same, but that's the one stipulation. We're not going to be an organization with secrets. And it has remained that way in our meetings and things like that. And so, but if you look at Grosclose or McGill or Sanders or Newman, and if you look at a couple things, right? So we look at the vice presidents, what they say verbatim in opening ceremonies, right? Why is the president so stationed? The rising sun is the token of a new era in agriculture. If we will follow the leadership of our president, we shall be led out of the darkness of selfishness and into the glorious sunlight. But we know that, right? But why? Why did they pick a rising sun? When George Washington presided as president of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, there was a rising sun carved on the back of his chair. And when the Constitution was ratified and the states, all 39 delegates signed it, and when George Washington arose from his chair and Benjamin Franklin looked at the chair, he said many times during this process, I have contemplated whether that sun is rising or setting, and I am confident in saying now that it is rising. But our founders were not dummies. They understood the power of what history had done for them, right? And so you look at several other things. Brotherhood is a huge part of being a Freemason, because all Freemasons are men. So, there's telltale signs. In Freemasonry, they have a Tyler. They guard the door. Well, in our deal, we have the Sentinel, right? And there's labor and tillage of the soil. Without labor, neither knowledge nor wisdom can accomplish much. All of that language comes from language that came from our founding fathers, that came from the Freemasons, and our creed too. And I've never been able to figure out whether or not Tiffany was a Mason. But every lesson of what I know about Masonry in the language that he used in the creed tells me that he must have been a Mason, because nobody talks that. Even if he was educated in the classics of Latin, Greek, and the Roman history and literature, there's no way that he wasn't a Mason, because that language in there, the prose is so good and so well said. And they didn't have ChatGPT. They didn't have.
They had to write just for real.
They had to read. I know it's a foreign concept.
I know.
to and everybody says, well, don't be too wordy. Why?
Yeah.
Why not? We have a wonderful language. Why not use it? And I'm like, just because everybody else don't understand it, because they don't like to read books, doesn't mean we have to sound dumb for everybody else. You see why this gets me fired up as a man who enjoys great prose and the written word. It offends me greatly. I'm going to have a crash out here. You understand? Okay. It offends me greatly when people get intimidated at words well said. And that's what our founders were all about.
I have no response.
If we develop the philosophy, it is the philosophy that built this organization. It is the philosophy that made it what it is, and will continue to make it what it is. But you have to understand what they were talking about. You have to understand how a life of ease and comfort is not the way to happiness.
So, Lyle, are you saying, do we need to have, where we have the national officers and past state officers that do the workshops for the kids, do we need to have a good old-fashioned workshop or two on what all this history stuff means for FFA? So
we need to get all together and get about 6 inches each apart from each other and go, what do you truly believe? I'd really like to know it. I don't care what you're going to put on social media. I don't want 6 or 7 paragraphs about how you feel about something that happened. I really want to know what everybody truly believes. Hey, what's your end game? What's your goal? What's the magnum opus of why we're here doing any of this anyway? I'd really like to know. Because if kids and students don't come out of this better, with a better mindset than they have right now, we're cooked. We're doomed, because we see it every day. And I don't know if we have the power to change that. I don't know if you and I and several other dedicated ag teachers and yours and I's ever shrinking circle of friends, because
we're going to offend everybody on this episode.
The truth is, you and I have the unfortunate habit of telling the truth in a profession where most rarely say what they mean because they're too afraid of getting offended. I'm going to get canceled. Right. Let's cancel the guy because he's a maverick and had a what's the statistical term? He had an outlier. Right.
Well, but really,
like you're an outlier and they get offended at that.
What are we saying? We want kids to act like young professionals.
Heck yeah.
We want our teachers to act like professionals. Yeah. We would like for our members and our ag teachers to maybe have an opportunity to revisit some of the history that founded this organization. I mean, we're coming up on 100 years pretty quick, and I think it would be a great opportunity now to really spend time revisiting some of these historical figures for this organization that have really stood the test of time. I mean, we talk about Henry Grosclose, and he did this 100 years ago. I mean, we've got Larry in this book, spent 26 years as the national advisor through easily one of the roughest times in the organization. And, he's still kicking. We need to spend time at the convention providing opportunities for students. And I do appreciate the guys at Tech for doing what they did, but we need to have an opportunity for students and teachers to really dig deep and dive down into, the struggles of what it took to get this organization started, talking about the years during World War II where there were just a couple hundred boys at the convention and how things were lean there for a while. Mm-hmm. And then, in the 80s when things really started going sideways and ag teaching schools were closing programs and they weren't joking. And, my dad worked in a program. It was a 2-teacher program and it went to 1 and my dad was elected and the other guy was gone. And that was during the 80s, during all this mess, right. And if we don't, and you're a connoisseur of American history, you should be leading the charge for this because, if we don't understand where we came from, we're doomed to repeat it. And the bigger we get and the further we get away from where we were, we're going to have a lot of students that really don't understand what things are and what we're actually trying to do. But
well, look at my back wall.
I can't see it as well because my dirty glasses that double as glaucoma.
But look at my back wall. But I got 2 NFA emblems hanging on the wall. I got that manual back there from 1931. Ain't nobody ever going to come to me and tell me what that I don't know where we came from.
So
right?
So Lyle, you're pretty charged up, and we want to get this deal shut down here pretty quick. But you weren't this fired up before you went to the convention. Do you bring this excitement back with you to school with your kids when you come back?
Oh, I mean, if I was teaching freshmen, maybe, but I teach ag mechanics all day long and that subject doesn't really come up, and so not as much. I mean, I get sometimes pretty jaded at the fact that, I get kind of jaded at the fact that we have the light show and we have the smoke and we have the big stage and we have the opportunity, I guess, to tell everybody how we really feel. But I just get a little, World War II ended 80 years ago, right? In 1945, right? And we had 245,000 FFA members that fought in World War II, at least former members. A couple of them were on the Doolittle raid. Where's that slideshow?
Yeah, aren't we talking about some of that?
Yeah. Where's that? And that gets me a little, I just don't know. I just feel like nobody cares. Nobody, I feel like a lot of kids just walk by that table at National Convention and are like,
now, what is this all about?
Cool. But I'm like, you have no idea. Them guys.
It doesn't help that their ag teacher probably didn't know.
Them guys came from nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, and that's why I'm wearing my old school 1960s FFA
I was so
here.
shocked when you came on here and I saw that because that's the same pennant. I have a pennant up here in this classroom with that same emblem on it. Somebody somewhere saw that.
Yeah, I don't know who it was. These shirts from, but I got them at the convention.
I don't know who was looking. Somebody had their ticker thinking and thought that'd look great on a shirt. That right there pays so much homage to a lot of years of hard work. Future farmers of America, is not an offensive term.
No, and lest we forget. Now, at the same time, we don't want to alienate students that want to be involved in agriculture, but farming's not their jam.
I'm not a farmer. I am
but I
3
also
generations
wanna-
removed.
But I'm going to have some kids that they're going to go off to college and they're going to come back. They're going to ranch with mom and dad. I mean, I call that a farmer,
Yeah.
and I think it's great. And you know what? And I guess if there's a takeaway from the convention, other than the rant and raving, and we saw some good things, and we saw some things I know everybody knows we need to improve. You know, if you're a young teacher and it was the first or second time you've been in the convention, let the excitement, don't let it get too much for school, and don't come back and monitor and meter out your excitement with the students, because you could burn yourself out before you ever get started.
Oh, yeah.
Find a nice place to meet in the middle and continue to push your students, because you can take away things from the convention. I've done this for a long time. I brought some notes back and some things that I've already started to implement slowly. The kids don't know it because they can't tell a difference. I know what I'm doing differently, but they don't. And it's working to our advantage, and the kids don't even realize it yet. And that just comes with time and practice. But Lyle, any last words?
Keep buggering on. Whoever's listening, just keep KBO. Keep buggering on. That's what Winston Churchill used to say.
Well, we're well-mannered and
Well-manured.
full of manure this evening.
I think
Thanks, folks, for joining us.
We got it all covered. Thanks.